Hey, welcome back to the Think Like a Teacher podcast. I'm pretty excited about this episode. I'm with Matt Karabinos. Hopefully, I didn't check. Did I say it right?
You were close enough. It's Karabinos, but yeah, you're close enough. It's all
Karabinos.
good.
Okay, Mike Karabinos. We've connected a while ago on LinkedIn and have been kind of following each other, sharing some insights, and just matching up schedules has been a bit of a struggle, but we're here and I'm super excited. You teach sixth grade, is that correct
Correct.
still?
Yep.
Teaching sixth grade, love AI, post a lot about its capabilities and what it does. The interesting thing is that you have a pretty unique, we'll call it relationship with AI in your profession.
Yes.
And so maybe we'll try to touch on that just a little bit. Also, one of the founding members of the Human Intelligence Movement.
Yes.
So all things that are amazing that resonate with me. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And so we'll just kind of get into a little bit. What's your background into getting into teaching? Is it something that you always wanted to do?
So, kind of, yes. When I graduated high school, I got a summer job with a summer camp, YMCA summer camp. And from that first year that I did that as a summer camp counselor, I absolutely loved working with kids. We had so much fun in that first year that I did. And then I had so much fun that I actually stayed a summer camp counselor. I went back there, I think, for about 8 more years after that. I
Wow.
kept going there for 8 more years, 8 more summers, and had lots of fun. And by that time, when I went into college, that's when I was like, you know what? I had always known that I wanted to do teaching.
Yeah.
I wanted to originally be a high school math teacher. That didn't pan out at my university. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I needed to get a degree in mathematics first. Um,
Oh, interesting.
and that was a bit of a struggle for me. So I like to share the story with my students all the time too. That I had quite a culture shock going from high school to college, because high school and school, before high school, came very easily to me, and I never acquired the skills to learn how to study. And so
Hmm.
when I made it to college, it was very much a trial and error thing. So I tell students that story every year, that like, even if you think things are easy, you still have to like learn how to study. So that's my
Yeah.
cautionary tale that I tell everybody. But so I had to shift gears a little bit, and I moved into elementary education, a master's program. And so my undergrad
Okay.
is actually in developmental psychology. So I have a applied developmental psychology, again, working with
Okay.
kids. And
Yeah.
so that led right into my master's program, getting into teaching. So instead of being high school math, I moved to elementary. I was very lucky that I was able to get the old school, I guess. Oh God, yeah, it is old school now, the K-6 degree. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of how the journey started. And I graduated and came out in 2010, but I actually didn't get my first teaching job until 2018.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I took
Okay.
quite a bit of time away from teaching. I worked in the oil field for a couple years,
Okay.
in central Pennsylvania, and like, Ohio, West Virginia, the whole, fracking
Yeah.
area up
Yeah.
here, natural gas. Um, so yeah, I was very involved with that for a couple years. Learned a
Hmm.
lot. That was a amazing experience. And I knew that wasn't my forever job. It was very
Yeah.
painful. It
Yeah.
was
That
lots of
doesn't.
crazy hours, and I was like, no, this isn't going to be the main thing. Um, so I eventually found my way back to teaching in 2018. I started off at a small private school in the center of Altoona, Pennsylvania, which is where I currently live. So middle of
Okay.
the state in Pennsylvania, central PA. Um, and then yeah, I just switched. I think it's 3 years ago now, over to a public school. So that's
Oh,
not in
cool.
Altoona, but is close by.
Close
And
enough.
yeah, close
Close enough.
enough. And it's a really cool experience jumping from the private school system into the public school system. It's it's crazy to see both sides of things. So
Yeah, I'm always interested in that. So there's not a ton of private schools in my area, but there are lots of like private charters or public
yeah.
charters and different things like that. And I have friends that kind of bounce back and forth. What would you say is the biggest difference? Like if you had your choice, you had your way, would you teach in a private school or a public school?
Well, that's a loaded question because there are great aspects of both. I mean, so for private school, I definitely had a lot more flexibility and freedom in terms of what I could teach and what I could bring into the school.
Yeah.
I introduced them to the mystery science curriculum, which is
Oh,
I
cool.
taught science and I absolutely love that curriculum. So I brought that in and introduced that to them. And so like I had a lot more freedom. Like they let me do that. There wasn't like you have to teach this science
Gotcha.
program from this book and all that. So there's a little more freedom. Um, Moving into the public school, I mean, obviously the pay is different,
Mhm.
very different. Um, but there is a little more, I don't want to say rigidity, but I guess it is a little bit rigidity because
Sure.
it's like we have our curriculum, we need you to follow these things. We have a book. My district has really never said like I need you to teach from this book, but it's like all these things are available to you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there is a little bit of freedom, a little bit of leeway there on certain things.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what I found, and it's varied from district to district. Like I feel like from what you've described, I feel lucky. My district is kind of in that middle ground where there are state standards that we need to follow. As a district, we're a pretty big district. I think in terms of high schools, there's 5 high schools in our district. There are dozens of middle schools, dozens of elementary
Yeah.
schools.
Wow.
So it's a monster district. But what that means is that we have a little bit more resources and committees to help design and help new teachers and continuing teachers to have supports on like a pathway,
Yes.
but there really is a lot of autonomy in terms of what it looks like in our classrooms, which is
Absolutely.
kind of cool. Um, okay, so yeah, I love hearing people's background to getting into teaching because it isn't necessarily a glorious job. Like, it's not like a job that you when you're going to career day, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a teacher because I'm gonna make so much money
Yeah.
and everybody's gonna know my name and I'm gonna be on the cover of all the magazines. That's not why we do it.
Nope.
Um,
No.
and so it's interesting. Mine is kind of the opposite. I just kind of stumbled into teaching. I had lots of different majors. Wasn't initially sure I was going to go to university. I was thinking maybe I'd go to like a trade school, maybe the Art Institute, something like that. Um, but kind of like I don't remember if we were talking about this already, but like figuring out like my learning path, I didn't really know what that looked like. Um, and so it was kind of this one day walked into the education building and said, "Hey, my study group says I'm good at teaching stuff." Because at that point, I'd like figured that was a good thing to do to join a study
Of
group.
course.
And they were like, "Dude, you're so good at explaining things." I'm like, "Well, maybe I could do that for a job." And so, yeah, I just walked in and I said, "Hey, can I do this as a job?" They're like, "Yeah, that's what the School of Education is for. So, what do you want to teach?" I said, "I don't know. What do you got?
Yeah.
What are the choices?" And so, kind of went through the list. I hats off to you for teaching math. That was, like many students, one of my least favorite things because I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me.
Yes.
Have a huge appreciation for it now,
Yeah.
especially in sciences. But I was like, well, biology was kind of a fun class in high school. I'll teach that and also PE. So
Right.
that's kind of how I got
Yeah.
here. But it was one of those things that, like, man, once you, what isn't different, what is pretty similar, like, once you kind of get in that teaching mode and it clicks and you're like, oh, dang, this is where I'm meant to be. Education is my world. So I love my job. It's evolved and changed a little bit over the years, but at its core, it's education and it's helping kids get the I don't want to use the word education too much, but the experiences,
Yeah.
get the experiences that they deserve to have so that they're better equipped and better prepared for life after after school, after they graduate, things like that.
That's what education should be.
Yes. So let's get into that a little bit. So, like, clearly there's a lot of buzz around, the current system, and some might say it's broken, some might say it's not broken but needs reform. They all kind of mean the same thing. You've talked a lot recently about artificial intelligence, and so I'm interested to know your perspective on AI in education and kind of what you see its role as being.
Yeah, I'm very open about my use of AI and how I do things with AI. I also I sometimes worry that I use AI a little too much. I use it almost every day, and literally it's like Ethan Mollick calls it, this alien brain, and it's this alien
Mm,
brain that's always in your pocket, and you always can get a different perspective on things or get new ideas on things at the drop of a hat, like almost instantaneously, which is really,
yeah.
really cool for me. Um, I use it a lot to help me create things for my class, and definitely use it to come up with different ways to teach things. This year, I went really hard in introducing the building thinking classrooms framework from Peter Liljedahl.
Mhm.
And the whole idea behind his system is kids are up out of their seats, they're at a whiteboard, and they are together collaborating. And collaboration is a very, very important life skill to have.
Right.
And so the fact that they do this every day, some days we do it for like, maybe 5-10 minutes. Some days the problems are hard enough that it takes us, 45 minutes to get through one. And these kids are thinking hard the whole time, and it's really cool to see kids, find it reminds me of like seeing all those videos of like, mice trying to go through a maze. And
Oh,
they
yeah, yeah.
realize like, oh wait, that didn't work, so they come back and then they go, and then so watching their whiteboards, they'll have it all the way down to here, and then the next time I look back at their group, they're all the way back up to where, so there's
Oh,
constant,
man.
back and forth, and they're constantly like working with each other, like, wait, what if we try this, what if we do this? um, so it creates a really cool environment. Now it doesn't work perfectly every day. Some
Sure.
days kids are way more into it than others, but
Mhm.
the thing that I use AI for a lot is aligning the tasks that the kids do with whatever standard or topic that I'm teaching at that time. So I've
Okay.
I've created like my own custom GPT through like Chat GPT, and I've made it based off of like the any research articles and things like that Peter Liljedahl himself has released or that other people have released about him. So that's like its knowledge base. It has like the whole framework of the system,
Mm.
how these things are created, and then I put in my standards as well. And I pretty much gave it a goal of like, your goal is to, whenever I give you a topic, you're going to give me like 5 really good ideas for really higher order thinking tasks that are
Yeah.
going to get kids thinking beyond just doing the problems, the rote problems and stuff like that. It's been really, really effective and helpful, rather than trying to sit and search and find perfect resources to use. I
Yes.
have them at the drop of a hat. And again, I mean, I don't know if my students would agree, but I feel like they are learning at a different level than they've ever learned before. Because this
Yeah.
is for all of my students, this type of system and pedagogy is something that they have never experienced before.
Mhm.
They come in, and I'm really bad at this part because I have a Promethean board, but you're supposed to defront the classroom.
Okay.
So like there's no front of the classroom. So when you give out a task or when you give instructions, you're supposed to pick a different spot like every day. Like just go stand somewhere and the
Oh,
kids all stand
interesting.
around you. So there's no front of the room. Problem is, like, I use that Promethean board to share so much information. So
Yeah.
it's like, there's still kind of is a front of the classroom, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
show them something and then I walk somewhere else and give, so I do my best to kind of follow along with it. But the core value of that collaboration is so vital and so important. And I mean, what's really cool is like I'm collaborating with AI to
Hmm.
get my
Hmm.
students to collaborate with each other.
Yes.
Very meta
Yeah.
thing there.
I mean, that's pretty cool though, because and I think this will be valuable for a lot of listeners that might be in a similar position. So just kind of as point of reference, there are some districts across the globe and across the country that are very, very open to like, yeah, let's use all of the AI. And they don't really have a process for what that looks like, which can cause problems.
Mhm.
And then there are other districts that are on the complete opposite end of the scale, like, nope, nope, absolutely none of it. And then there's districts that it's a spectrum. And so I think as point of reference, I come from a place where uh fortunately enough is pretty embracing of artificial intelligence. Kind of. There's only one platform that we use that we've approved. If you try to use absolutely anything else, even like Google's, I think Gemini is currently unblocked. That's probably going to change. But Notebook LM, nope, nothing, not even for teachers.
That's
So
sad.
there's one that we, yeah,
That's
and
the
it
best
is, but
one, I think.
yeah, Notebook is pretty phenomenal. So, but we do have access to School AI, which is an incredible platform.
Absolutely.
Um, and so, from what I understand for you, you're on one of the ends of the spectrum where the district is like, we're not there yet. We don't have a policy, so we're not going to whitelist AI tools right
Correct.
now. And so you're still allowing your students and yourself to grow professionally with the use of AI without exposing them necessarily to the dangers of, data breaches and things that I think many districts are legitimately concerned with. So I think that's really cool that it's still something for those of us that are in situations where, yeah, the district doesn't allow it. There are lots and lots of ways to continue to utilize AI for our practice
Yes.
that don't necessarily mean you're using it at work
Right.
in the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, my district is definitely on the other end of that spectrum. They are very much a wait for
Hmm.
policy, kind of wait for instructions from above to come down before they kind of, roll things out.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is understandable. I mean, my district, it's a very small rural district,
Mm.
very much, like most businesses that are, small and rural. They don't want to cause waves. They don't want to. They
Well,
don't
I
want to
think
cause waves. So they just kind of, we'll wait and see what the bigger fish do, and then if we agree with that, we're going to follow along with that.
mhm,
And that's kind of how things go, which is understandable. I personally, I feel that like AI is such a momentous thing, that it is really a disservice to not maybe not let students use it like we
sure.
talked about, maybe not letting students use it, but at least giving them some sort of like, this is what it is, this is its capabilities, this is its limitations.
Right.
um,
Right.
I'm of the mindset, and agree to disagree, but I'm of the mindset that the more that we expose them to what it is and have them learn about what it is and get them kind of comfortable with the idea that it's like here and going to be here forever, the more I think we're going to start to see a shift in, instead of students wanting to use it for, oh, it can do my whole essay for me. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I hold up my phone to my math homework and it can solve everything for me. You know, I think if we started these lessons earlier, and again, you don't have to do it by using AI tools. You can just have the
Sure.
conversations about it and just kind of show them, just basically, hey, this is what machine learning, and you can go as in depth or not in depth as you want. But I feel like if students have that basis of knowledge, that we would see a significant shift away from this idea of using AI for cheating. Um,
Mhm.
and to me, it's understandable from an empathetic point of view. It's very understandable to see the kind of hesitation, because the
Right.
implications of AI for teachers is that now we have to redesign kind of everything. Um, we
Yeah.
kind of have to
Yeah.
redesign everything because, I have a very close friend. I met him on TikTok. We talk on link. Now we text and talk and send each other video
Mhm.
messages all the time. But his name's Aaron McKelkey. And he's on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn and social media now. But, we talk all the time about this idea of just like getting that exposure for the kids and how important that
Yeah.
is, because this is a thing that it's not going to slow down. And if anything,
Mhm.
as we've seen in the last couple months, it's just going to go faster and faster and get better and better. And he talks about all the time about how, if you give a kids an essay and you have them do the essay at home, there is almost no way that you're going to be able to tell the difference between a kid writing, especially if it's a really smart
Yeah.
kid, a kid who's a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
good writer, and again, if the kids are, if they've watched a few TikToks on how to use Chat GPT or any of the other ones, you could literally just
Yeah.
say, write this like a sixth grader, write this like a seventh grader, write this like an eighth grader, make a couple mistakes. So, like you could
Yeah.
formulate it to do whatever you want it to do. So, like as teachers, that's a really scary thing, that if I give this thing that I've been giving for years and now the kids can just have something do it for them, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get them to learn?
Yeah.
So that's a big fear for us, is having to redesign. In my opinion, I think that's one of the largest hurdles that we have
Yes.
in the education system, is that fear of having to, like, oh my god, we have to do everything all over again. Like we have to
Which
redesign
in our
everything.
profession, to be fair as well, historically, there are so many things that have come through. They're like, oh yeah, now we do this, now we do that, now this is a new thing.
Yep.
And so teachers that I talk with are part of, even in my district that seems to be a little more progressive, there are still lots of teachers that have been teaching for a long, long time that are in that sit and wait camp. They're
Yeah.
like, you know what? Yeah, I don't really understand AI, and I do understand that lots of things have come and gone.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that you say that it's gonna stick around, but that's what they said about,
Yeah. That
all of the other things.
you're
And so it
absolutely
it
right.
totally makes sense. We're a pretty reluctant group to want to move the target without knowing that there's a benefit to moving the target.
Right.
And I think AI is kind of pushing us to do that a little bit. Is you know, a big example that I hear often is calculator, like
Yeah.
calculator
Yeah.
doing math. Like I had a teacher in high school. You probably had a teacher in high school that if I asked if I could use a calculator, he would look at me with his lazy eye and tap his pencil on his head and say, "This is my calculator." Shout out to Mr. Pranty,
Yeah.
but like, but that's not the thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like we use calculators. That's the way it is.
Yep.
And I imagine that at that time, teachers had to move the target. We had to really understand, okay, is it really about this or is it about something else?
Yeah.
It's interesting though, as I'm saying this, um, I have kids that are elementary age, fifth grader, third grader, kindergarten right now. And they started bringing home those assignments that I remember from second grade, learning how to tell time on an analog clock.
Yeah.
And instantly, like my first thought, I'm not kidding, was like, huh, I wonder how long they're going to hold on to that one.
Not
But
very
as,
long.
but, well, like teachers, like how long are the
Yeah.
teachers really going to,
Yeah.
we got to teach them it. But as I started thinking about it, like, wow, there's actually a lot of things that get taught by understanding analog clocks. Same with long division. Like my elementary age kids are learning long division and they ask me for help. I'm like, dude, I don't know. What did your teacher tell you
Yeah.
how to do that? because I don't do it. But I think there's a lot to be said about developing these really fundamental skills of things like problem solving and quantifying things and understanding relationships of cause and effect.
Yeah,
That as we build the foundation, it seems that we can start to use these tools in really clever ways. Like, because you have this huge background and wealth of life experience, you can use AI in a pretty clever way as an adult. And you're not cheating at your job. You're not like, working the system, but you're being clever with the tools that are given to you because you're combining that with a huge foundation of here's stuff I already know how to do.
yeah,
So it sounds like that's kind of your goal with your students, like, hey, I know that you can't use it right now, and that's okay that you can't use it right now, but understand there are lots of skills that we should develop prior to just jumping in.
absolutely.
Would you say that's kind of a fair assessment to say for teachers who maybe
Oh,
haven't used AI before as well?
well,
Like, what's the entry point, I guess, to get ready to be good at using AI?
uh, so I have this, like, I hear this a lot when people talk about, entry level getting into AI. Um, I'm a part of a group that, again, I found through TikTok. Like, I learned so many things and made so many connections through TikTok, but there was this group called the AI Salon. And over Christmas break, I did a webinar for them, and there was over 150 people from like 30 different countries. I mean, it was pretty cool. I
Cool.
mean, obviously, a webinar, you can't like see everybody, but that was kind of cool to find out that there was just that many
Yeah.
people there. But their big push, their big thing to start is literally play with the tool. Pick a
Mm.
tool. So a lot of people choose ChatGPT because it's the one they know. And quite honestly, ChatGPT's kind of like become like Kleenex. Like, it's so ChatGPT is AI. Like, that's how a lot of people
Yeah.
like think
Yeah.
about it. Like,
Yeah.
they don't realize that there's all these, different systems out there. And so, like, that's what they tell people. And I fully agree with that. Like, the entry point for AI is no joke. Just sit down and just start talking to it. Start typing and texting to it. Like, I go a step further and I say, especially from a teacher perspective, I say ask AI to do something that you don't think it can do.
Oh,
Um,
it's interesting.
so as you're sitting there having this conversation, I always say ask AI to do something you don't think it can do. Um, a great story to share is a local friend of mine. She is really curious about AI, but she's been teaching for 30 years. And she's like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to need to know this stuff. And, she's like, I
Oh,
don't,
yeah. Yeah.
and so she's been teaching for a very long time. But I said, like, just play. I said, what's something that you don't think that a machine is going to be able to do? And she's like, well, I heard that it's like really bad at math. And I said, okay. I said, what I want you to do is take your math assignment that you just sent home with your kids. I said, hold your phone, snap a picture of that, and say, can you solve all these problems? Okay. And she did it. And believe it or not, it used to be really bad. And this is another thing
Hmm.
that's really hard for people to understand. That used to be the joke. Well, yeah, ChatGPT, AI, they can't do math. Well, it can now. Like, it is very
Yeah.
good at doing almost everything now that a human can do. Um, and so she was just like, I said, so if you need to create an answer sheet, there you go. You just copy and paste. There's your answer sheet. I said, but like, imagine for a moment that you have kids who have cell phones, have devices. And
Hmm.
she does because she teaches fifth grade. And a lot of kids in fifth grade and sadly earlier have devices.
Yeah.
And even with free versions of things, you can still snap a picture and say, solve this for me. Uh, I would hope, and this is the one thing that I would love to like get kids to know is like, instead of just snapping a picture and say, can you do this for me? Snap a picture and say, can you help me understand how to do this?
Yeah.
And a very simple shift, just don't do it for me, but like walk me through it. Walk me through all the things. And like, so that's where I tell people to start. Have a conversation with it and try to get it to do something you don't think it can do. I, the teachers that I have done professional developments for in my area, when I put up their writing prompt for writing an essay, and
Mhm.
I typed in, I showed them, I put up their writing prompt and I said, I need you to respond to this as a sixth grader, seventh grader, whatever, an average. I say as an average sixth grader, seventh grader, and it
Yeah.
writes it out. And they're like, whoa, like, and I said, yeah, yeah, that your students can do that right now for free if they wanted to.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so that's what I was like, this is what we need to be aware of. This is why I'm glad, and this is I tell them, I'm glad you're
Mhm.
here. That means you want to learn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I try to frame it for teachers. I don't want to like scare teachers about AI, but at the same
Right.
time, there has to be at least a small sense of urgency, because again, to think that there is a technology even more so than the calculator, because again, you add the calculate, you have to know what to punch in and what to type in. This thing, you can
Yeah.
literally just say, write me a paper about this, and it's done. Like,
Yeah,
so,
I was talking to Dan
oh,
Fitzpatrick,
yes.
author of Infinite Education, and he didn't take credit for this, but I can't remember who said it to him. So I'm gonna Dan, you can let me know who was the appropriate author of this quote. But the AI is the first technology that speaks our language.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like and it grows so fast. Like what you were mentioning is that you used to not be good at math. And in our industry, when something didn't work a certain way, it was years before it got better at doing that thing.
Correct.
This isn't one of those things. This is weeks and then it will be better at that thing,
Yeah.
which is another one of those things that's kind of hard to wrap our minds around. And so while AI is incredibly useful and we do need to help our students understand how it works, human skills, fundamentals of like knowing what buttons to push on a calculator, so to speak,
Hmm.
are crucial. It's something that I talk a lot about on LinkedIn. You obviously talk about that a lot on LinkedIn as well, which kind of leads into the human intelligence movement.
Yes.
I'm interested in sharing more with the listeners and for myself, learning a little bit more about kind of what is the goal, what is the purpose of the human intelligence movement? What does it have to do with education and AI?
So the human intelligence movement came across my LinkedIn feed, because I have my algorithm very, very well preserved right now. Um, they came across my feed. Oh gosh, probably I don't even know, maybe 8 months ago, somewhere around there. But
Okay. Yeah.
I saw their one of their first posts, and I was like, oh, I'm on board. I'm all on
Hmm.
board with that. Um, what drew me in is that, first of all, so what it has to do with education, it's pretty much all put together by educators. So almost everyone in the group is in the education realm, whether that be an ed tech company, whether that be a teacher, whether that be a superintendent or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
everyone is kind of education, either in education or like education adjacent. um,
Right.
so I joined right away as soon as I saw it. I don't know, Michelle Ament, she's the like founder. She's pretty much the person who it came across from me, that I saw it from first. But she's like the director now, the leader essentially of the human intelligence movement. Um, I think I was one of the first, like, I don't know, 100 members, maybe even like first 50. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
feel like I jumped in really early. But what drew me in was one of their main ideas, eventually, is policy change. They want to work with education departments and systems towards a shift in policy, to move away from this idea of, I believe she refers to it as knowledge acquisition, into a human skills acquisition, human
Yeah.
intelligence acquisition. So really moving the needle away from this idea. And I'm not going to lie to you, one of the main things that really got me immediately was their idea of removing and getting rid of standardized testing. I mean,
Oh,
and
gotcha.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, if you mention getting rid of standardized testing, I bet you would have 99% of teachers in the United States on board with you. Um, I bet you that would be a thing. So that's part of their policy change, is kind of move away from these standardized testing that focus on this whole idea of like knowledge acquisition and just
Right. Right.
remembering knowledge, because of the fact that we have this amazing tool right now, AI, that can help us with the knowledge acquisition part. So the
Yeah.
shift in thinking is, what skills do people actually need to thrive in a world where AI is essentially ubiquitous? It's everywhere. So what
Mhm.
are those skills? So they've developed their 12 pillars, and don't ask me to quote them all, but they are very much based around a lot of the things that, the McKinsey report and the Cengage report, the skills that businesses are looking for: adaptability,
Yeah.
empathy, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, the four C's, from ISTE, and
Yeah.
all of those things. That stuff is really, and they really want to make those things the focus of education, and move away from this idea of like, did you learn this thing at this time to take this test, did and all this knowledge acquisition
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
because and again, this is a hard pill to swallow, that idea of, you have infinite knowledge at your fingertips. Now, you and
Right.
I'm imagining that you and I are around the same age. Okay, we don't have to tell everybody,
Mhm.
but I'm going to imagine we're around the same age. So
If
we,
you look at me from an aerial view, you
yeah,
can guess my age.
show it
So,
back here. That's why I do my hair this way, so I cover everything up. But um, we were in this shift, right? This shift from, we didn't have computers to we have computers. And now, not only do we have computers, now we have the internet. And
mhm.
so again, the conversation I remember from the internet is like, don't use it to do, don't use it to find all your information, and you can't rely on all those sources. And it's like, look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
now. Like, look at now. It is where, so we've had the ability for a long time to acquire knowledge for ourselves. Now it's absurd, because we could take that knowledge and it gets synthesized and put out to us in a way that we personally can understand.
Right.
And that is, I don't want to go too far, too crazy, but like, that is another way that I use AI a lot. If I have an article or something that I want to share with my students, if I have one student in my class who is on a second grade reading level. I teach sixth
Mm.
grade, so he's on a second
Yeah.
grade reading level. Writing is incredibly difficult for him. So the tools that I can now utilize, because AI has made it so much easier, I take an assignment that I'm giving the rest of my class, and I can differentiate it down to a second grade level for him. He will understand, and he will get the same knowledge out of the
Mhm.
material that the other students will, but he can access it. He can read it, and he understands it.
Yeah.
The ability to use the uh, talk, what is it? Speech to text
Like speech to
on the
text. Yeah.
computer. He, instead of having to sit there and spend so much mental effort on trying to spell the word correctly, and then getting frustrated because I'm not writing fast enough, I can't keep up because I can't spell all these words right, and it leads to a lot of frustration. And the same with typing. You know,
Mhm.
typing skills are something that I feel like an entire generation took for granted, because now the kids are really good at typing like this, but they are not good at typing like this on a keyboard. And
Yeah.
so, given the fact that most of our technology that we have for the kids now in schools is still keyboard based, um, that is still a struggle for him. So the fact that there is an ability for him to even use speech to text and just talk, and just in his natural voice, and it recognizes all that, it puts it into sentences for him, and it, separates things, like, that is a such a major game changer for teachers to
Yeah.
help their students. And so that's really the core of what the human intelligence movement is all about, is helping these students be prepared for the world that they are going to enter when they leave school. Whether that be high school, or whether that be college, or whether that be a trade school or an
Yeah.
apprenticeship, wherever they leave, those skills that the human intelligence movement is working towards, those are the skills you'll need no matter what job or what profession you do. So that's,
Yeah.
there you
They're
go.
highly transferable. And it's the same as a teacher's perspective. Like, I imagine many teachers might feel this way. We're subject specific. Once you get to like 6th grade and on, you're teaching that thing.
Yep.
Um, I know that you said you teach science and math. Is that,
Yes.
but
So
like for me,
yeah.
like it's just advanced biology, and in that umbrella is AP Bio, IB Bio, anatomy and physiology. I have nothing to do with math. I have nothing to do with English or history, but the skills that my students need are the same skills that they need in their maths class. It's the same skills that they need in their language arts class, in their history class. That's
Mhm.
talking to other humans, that's finding good resources, that's making claims, that's justifying the things that you have found. So I love all of this. Big reason why I invited you on the show, just to share a little bit more about like why these things are so important.
Yeah.
On kind of a contrarian note,
Oh,
though,
okay.
so we talk a lot about building the foundation in this episode, like these fundamental skills, like the milk before meat kind of idea. There are people that, I'll use the phrase, break the mold sometimes. Um, so the thing that I think about, you're a music guy, I'm a music guy. I don't know if you took music classes when you were in high school or lessons or things like that. I did. Like from elementary school through high school, music was my life. It was always on my schedule. And I was always taught that if you want to be a good performing artist, you need to know the rules so that you can understand how to bend or break the rules.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're preaching right now. Like, if you want to be good at using AI, it's important that you understand all of the fundamental things. But there are people, music, well, stick to music. Like, we use the example just because he sang, performed recently. I think was it the Grammys? Benson Boone
Yeah.
um, gave an amazing performance. I was curious. I'm like, how long has this guy been doing? He has only been singing for a very short amount of time. Like, he's young and he started when he was 18. He didn't know he could sing, and he was like, "I'm going to try it for American Idol, see how this works." And so there are people that can kind of break that mold and it still works out for them. And so it's interesting. Like, on the one hand, yeah, it totally makes sense that we need to have all this foundation because you're going to need it.
Mhm.
But then you have people that just like, actually, I don't need that.
Yeah.
Going to do
Eh,
do my own thing.
well, and that perfectly like shows the difference here. Like, that shows the difference between, again, in a professional aspect, what a lot of companies and professionals are sharing, especially friends of mine in their professional careers. The
Hmm.
people who can use AI are, they're shooting, skyrocketing through their companies. And
Yeah.
they're like, the people at their companies are like, how'd you get that done so fast? Like, how'd you do that? And it's like, why are we like, my buddies are like, hey, our company like bought this whole thing for us. Like, why don't we use it? Like,
Yeah.
and like a really close friend of mine now, he created through ChatGPT, helping him write code to create a program that like piggybacks on the program that their work uses, that saves him like
Hmm.
legitimately like 3 hours a day. Like, it saves him like 3 hours of work a day
Yeah.
because he knows nothing about code, no computer background whatsoever. And he's able to just kind of say, I want to do this thing, and it is able to create this whole thing, and then he
Yeah.
he just ran with it. But that's the thing, I don't know anything about coding. Not the first. I mean,
Yeah.
I took coding classes, college and high school classes when I was in high school, but everybody took them because we all knew they were pretty easy. And I didn't retain anything from that class. I remember if then statements, I think is the only thing I remember. But
Yeah.
I didn't retain anything. But a couple months ago, my colleague and I wanted to implement this program where the kids practice their math facts in a timed fashion. It's a very
Mhm.
regimented thing every day. We did it one day, having the kids do it by paper. It took us 3 hours to check all our kids' work because we had to
Mm.
count their digits correct per minute and not like just how many they got right.
Oh, yeah.
So cumbersome. And then we realized that how this worked in other districts was they had teachers or paraprofessionals where it was they were the ones who were doing all the checking, so the teacher was still able to.
Oh,
So we were trying to do everything, and we're like, this isn't going to work. So we were like, man, it'd be really nice if the kids could do it like electronically, and then it automatically gave us a score at the end. And so, hey, ChatGPT, or George, as I call ChatGPT, not to anthropomorphize, but Claude has a
yeah,
name, so ChatGPT should have a name
certainly
as well.
does.
So I name it George. Um, I said, George, I want to create this program that does this. And within 10 minutes, I had a program that I could literally just copy and paste like into a browser. Like I saved it as a file, and explained to me how to do that.
Oh
I
my
didn't know
gosh.
how to put how do I use this code that you made? And it's like, oh, you put it in a text box and then you save that as a HTML and then you just double click it and it'll open it up in a browser. It explained all that stuff to me. I didn't
Wow.
know any of this stuff. And it created this game, and it's very simple, very rudimentary, but it literally will pop up with a random multiplication problem, and it has a timer that starts at a minute and it counts down, and at the end of it, it calculates their digits correct per minute. So if a kid, for example, if the problem's like 4 times 3 and a kid types in 13, it counts that as one digit correct. I tested this
Okay.
literally 50 times to make sure that it worked before I put it in front of my
Yeah.
students, and it was right every single time. And so I
Holy
was like,
moly.
"Oh my god, so it's giving the kids the score. It's giving the score that I need to get." And so
Yeah.
then I went one step further and I told the kids, "Take all your scores and put them into this Google form." And that Google form populates a Google sheet so I can see really quickly who is
There
progressing,
you go.
who's doing better, and who still needs work. I would have
To
never
take it a
been
step
able to
further,
do that.
you could probably even now, instead of looking at that data yourself that's produced on that Google sheet, take the Excel, whatever the
Yep,
exported file, put that into an AI model and say, hey, tell me which kids need help. And
100%.
boom, there you go.
100%.
You've got all of that going, man. Yeah. So technology, we really are in the future. I think that we're in an interesting demographic where like it really does feel like the future. Like
Yep.
our kids are like, man, this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. But we get it.
Yeah. Yes.
We're from the 1900s.
Yes.
So
As my students like to say, yes.
yeah, man, fantastic. This has been a really, really cool conversation.
Yeah.
I'm also interested to know, like, where do you see? Because we've talked a lot about how we maybe need to move the target a little bit in
Mhm.
education. 10 years from now, in technology land is really, really far away.
Like,
What do you imagine? But it's close enough for human years that we're going to get there.
yeah.
But things are gonna cook. 10 years from now, what do you imagine education, let's just say in the US, might be like? Or I guess what do you hope it's
Well, let's
like?
see.
We'll go with the hope.
Man, you are really good with loaded questions here. Big, big questions here.
I
Well,
am a curious fellow.
I,
I just
hey,
daydream about this stuff all the time.
listen. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, I think it's the last thing on there. Be curious, not judgmental. My favorite quote from
Right.
my favorite TV show, Ted Lasso. Greatest thing. I love the
Yeah.
curiosity. I try to instill that curiosity in my kids as well. So I love the big
Mhm.
questions. Um, so honestly, it really depends on, in America, it really depends on how we shift politically, which is sad, but it really does depend
Mm.
on how we shift politically to determine how far one way or the other will go.
Gotcha.
For
Yeah.
a much closer example, the talk of like closing down the Department of Education and things like that, that could
Mhm.
have massive ramifications for the education system within a couple years, let alone 10 years. Um,
Yeah.
I try really hard to see the other side of that argument and say, well, maybe if this department isn't there anymore, maybe then we can remove the things that were put in place because of that department, aka standardized testing.
Mm.
Maybe we
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
feel free, more free to make our own decisions individually of where we want to go, which then again
Mm.
opens up this possibility of shifting towards a more, human skills focused society. If
Right.
you tell teachers and admins and people in education, if you tell them that whole foundation of the human intelligence movement, again, you will have 99% of teachers and educators on board with you.
Saying, "Let's go."
They are
Yeah.
ready for it. So that, honestly, I that's what I hope to see. I hope that we've shifted away from this idea of focusing on the importance of these standardized tests. If like I don't mind that they're there, but the fact of how they're being used now, how they're being implemented, and the level
Yeah.
of stress, all you have to do is look at the data of how many of our kids now suffer from anxiety and stress over kids, let's say, from our generation. I mean, I was right before the whole big push on standardized testing. Like, so
Right.
I fell a little bit before that. I think the first, in Pennsylvania, they're called the PSSAs. But I think the first one was rolled out like when I was in 11th grade. I had to take a writing one. I had to do
Yeah.
something for writing. And then from there, it just skyrocketed. Um, but again, just once that happened, you could see a distinct shift in how teachers taught. And there was
Mhm.
more, oh my God, we got to cover all these things. We got to get all these things done. And there was less freedom for the teachers to explore things. You know,
Right.
Uh, we had a period a long time. I'll never forget. I don't remember the name of the movie, but oh my, it had Ryan Reynolds when he was really young and he was a teacher at this school.
Oh.
Oh my gosh, I can't remember it, but he comes in as like, I don't know if he's like a sub. I only remember seeing the movie from like halfway to the end. Like, but he comes in this movie as a sub, and I'll never forget this. This might even be the reason why I wanted to become a teacher. Now that I'm actually saying this out loud, he is doing this project with kids about dinosaurs and fossils, and he literally makes up a bunch of dinosaur bones out of like, I don't know, cardboard or whatever, and he goes and buries them out in the back like playground or whatever. And then he dresses up like, Sam Neill from Jurassic Park, and he takes the kids outside and he's like, we're going to go on an adventure today. And he like gives every kid a shovel and he's like, we're going to find these dinosaur bones. He's like, but when you find them, and he like teaches
Mm.
them how to like take it. And then he has this big lesson, and the kids are, you can imagine, right? The kids are just
Yeah.
enthralled.
Yeah.
And you watch that and you're like, everyone who watches that is like, that is amazing. That's what education should be. But then you go to the reality of what we have. And
Mm.
what we have is
Yeah.
you don't get to do that because maybe what he was teaching isn't covered on the test. So technically, according to standards, it's not worth teaching, right?
Yeah.
So you have this
Hmm.
really difficult situation that teachers are in because every teacher that I know would love to be that teacher right there. would love to do major projects, would love to go out into their community and do things with their community, but you don't have the time. You don't have
Yeah.
the time, and you don't have the ability. Again, maybe you're doing this project and you're learning about maybe, maybe 1 to 3 standards at a time. The time you spend on that, according to the powers that be, that's not worth it. You need to move faster.
Yeah.
And so that's where I
Yeah.
think a big, huge, I hope that we go back to that. Like, we go back to that, because I could almost
Interesting.
guarantee you that if you polled teachers from all over the world, they want to be that Ryan Reynolds teacher. They want to be that teacher that takes their kids outside, does these amazing projects, and gets the kids enthralled and excited about learning. They don't want to be the teacher
Yeah.
that's like, okay, today we have to learn this thing because you're going to be tested on this thing. You know,
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. So I googled it. School of Life,
that perfect.
name of the
Yes,
film,
that was it.
2005, which does kind of check out because it was around that time that really like standards based tests or
Mhm.
standardized tests became pretty huge. But it's interesting because, on the one hand, I totally agree with what you're saying of like kind of going back to this, like away from standardized testing. But on the other hand, having standards has also, I think, helped to improve education in a big way.
Yeah,
So maybe not necessarily teaching to a test, but getting all the teachers in your building on the same page, curricularly speaking,
yeah,
if that's a word,
yeah.
um, is I feel like I make words
We
up
make words
sometimes,
up here. It's
but
okay.
getting everybody on the same page has helped in a number of ways. Collaboratively, like we can all now share data and say, "Oh, you taught it that way. I taught it this way. My kids performed less good than yours did. What did you do?"
Yeah,
And we can improve students' experiences that way. But again, like you're saying, it can be taken to an extreme where the teacher's just like, nope, we're not going to do that because we're only going to teach to the test,
yeah, yeah,
and that's a disservice as well. So we are trying to find the balance, and I like that perspective because the teacher in me is a little nervous about future um, moves politically
yeah,
in terms of the Department of Education.
yeah.
But on the other hand, I am starting to kind of think about this like, well, maybe it will be okay.
I
Maybe it won't be as terrible. Maybe it will allow a little more autonomy and we could get a hybrid,
Yes,
right? Like where
yeah,
we still have
yeah,
standards and we're still trying to do the same thing together to make our kids' learning experiences awesome,
absolutely.
but we can be a little more loose, a
Yeah,
little more free.
I'm fully on board with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get. I think I agree with you 100% that the standards are a good thing. It's good, as you say, you've used this word multiple times, but it's good to have a target. It's good to have a
Yeah.
target to aim for. Um, you know, my kid's going to be going through potty training. It's good to have a target to
No,
aim
good
for.
luck.
It's
Yeah, it is.
it's good to have a target to aim for. So, like, I fully agree with that. But again,
Yeah.
like, you brought this up as well. The pressure that we put on
Hmm.
students, on teachers to perform on these tests are just it's too much. It's too much, and we in my opinion, again, this is all just from my personal opinion, but we don't give the kids enough time to play. Um, when
Yeah.
I had recess up until 8th grade, like, and then in high school I even had like a period that I could use as recess. We could
Hmm.
play football or hacky sack.
Yeah.
We're dating ourselves there.
Hacky
Hacky
sack. Yes,
sack.
sir. Those.
You know what I mean? So we had those opportunities to just like get out and play. But like right now, my recess for my kids in 6th grade is like 30 minutes. Maybe.
Mm,
Some days it's 25
yeah.
minutes, but like it's not enough. It's not enough for these
Yeah.
kids. And so, but again, if I want to take them outside, it's like, well, what instructional time are you missing? What are you missing because of that? And it's like,
Yeah.
I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, I can get more out of these kids in a 40-minute class period if I take them outside for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? If I take them outside for 10 minutes,
Yes.
I'm going to get more out of them for the time I have them.
Hmm.
And so, but again, that's a hard sell. That's a hard sell. You
Yeah.
need some major data to back up moves like that. But again, like that's the kind of stuff that I hope we can start to shift towards. And again, allowing teachers, like you said, to have more autonomy and to say like, and you just made me think of this, but we try to tell, and I'm trying to do this for my kids this year. I'm trying to tell them that it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And mistakes, like I have a Bob Ross quote on my wall too, that there's no learning without mistakes.
Happy accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no learning without mistakes. He says it in like a couple episodes, but somebody else probably said it before him. But I talk about that quote all the time with my kids, that there's no learning without mistakes. So you have to make mistakes. You cannot be afraid to make mistakes. And yet what we're telling our teachers to do now is to not take risks and don't make mistakes. We're all afraid to make mistakes. So that's where we're at. So we're kind of like not practicing what we're preaching.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to be a teacher.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
But it is inspiring and gives me hope when I talk to people like you, when I talk to really all of the guests that I've had so far on the show. It's a new podcast, and I only do like 2 episodes a month. So not that many. But it's been a really hopeful experience for me in seeing perspectives, not just from the United States or from teachers in my own building, but globally. Like, we're all thinking of the same things.
Yes.
And so it gives me hope that it's not a question. Oh, this is from a Goofy movie.
Yeah.
It's not a question of if, but a matter of time, kind of.
Yes.
It's not if it's going to happen. It's, this will happen. We just don't know when it will.
Right.
But it gives me hope
that
since a lot of the loud voices are saying similar things, that change can come.
Absolutely.
And that's really exciting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Matt, this has I've had a blast.
Yeah.
It's been fun. There are so many more questions that I would love to ask you. We might need to schedule a follow-up, maybe end of the year, beginning of next, and go for round 2 on this.
Yeah, I'm game. As long as my toddler's in bed, we're all good. Everything's good.
Sweet. Hey, so for those that are interested in learning more about you, things that you're posting, things that you're up to, what's the best way to get in touch or to see what you're up to?
LinkedIn, 100%. I go hard on LinkedIn. I have really, since I've revamped my LinkedIn, I post almost every day, sometimes a couple times a day. Some of them do better than others, but that I get a lot of messages on there. I try to respond to as many people as possible on there as well. I love having interactions with people. Just today, I had an interaction with a teacher that I met on LinkedIn, Praveen Kaipa.
I just started seeing his stuff as well. He's kind of another up and comer. I got to get him on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Reach out and be like, hey, I just talked to Matt and he said, you guys just talked. We need to talk. Yeah. No, he would love that. But we literally spent 5 minutes. I had 5 minutes before my kids walked back in the room, and he was like, let's just, catch up and talk real quick. And for 5 minutes, we just had a really nice conversation. He's in California. Cool. I'm out here, I'm in Pennsylvania. So we just had a really cool conversation. But LinkedIn is really where I do the most connecting. I do post on TikTok. TikTok's just fun. I have a lot of fun on TikTok. Mr. K All Day is my name on TikTok. And so you'll find me there. I'm on Instagram, but not as much. And I've kind of forgot that I have a Blue Sky account. So I kind of, I have one, but I kind of forgot about it.
I don't even know what that is. So
it's like the new Twitter, X, whatever. So a lot of people have moved away from Twitter and X for various reasons. So Blue Sky's kind of been like, come over here. But like I said, I forget that I have that. LinkedIn is definitely the best place. I get notifications. This is a bad thing, but I get notifications on my phone. And so I
had to turn mine off.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting pretty close to getting there. So, but yeah, that's the best way. And
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been a joy. This is Think Like a Teacher. I'll try to put some links in the description how you can get in touch and see other episodes. And we'll catch y'all next time.